Ladies and gentlemen, stop what you're doing and listen closely, because what just happened on CNN is one of the most jaw-dropping political meltdowns you're ever going to see in live television. Tonight, the Epstein files didn't just explode, they detonated right under Hakeem Jeffries, because in the last 24 hours, brand new emails surfaced. Emails that show Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted child predator, was being invited to a Democratic fundraising dinner to get to know Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. And when CNN confronted him with the receipts, Jeffries didn't explain it. He panicked. He froze. He tried to change the subject, and then he just completely melted down. But this is only the beginning, guys, because at the exact same time, the Democratic Civil War erupted on the House floor. 23 Democrats broke ranks in open rebellion. Plaskett's infamous Epstein text messages were exposed in new detail, and Garcia was caught manipulating an election timeline so blatantly obvious that even CNN couldn't defend it. This wasn't an interview. This was a public unmasking, a collapse, a reckoning. And with President Donald J. Trump now in the White House again, and the Epstein files being opened wider every single week, the Democrats who demanded transparency back in 2022, they're realizing far too late that they're demanding their own destruction. So tonight, you're going to see exactly why this cover-up is falling apart, why Jeffries couldn't answer a single question, why CNN, yes, I know, CNN turned on him live on air, and why this may be the moment the entire Democratic leadership structure fractures beyond repair. Buckle up, folks, because the political earthquake you're about to witness is bigger than anything Washington has seen since the Epstein story first broke. And trust me, once you hear what was said, what was asked, and what Jeffries tried desperately to hide, you're going to understand why Democrats are panicking behind closed doors. Hit the like button and subscribe. All right, so now let's get to the first bombshell first, okay? Because the moment that these new Epstein emails surfaced, everything changed. These weren't some vague references or some secondhand claims. No, this was a direct 2013 invitation sent from a Democratic consulting firm working with Hakeem Jeffries to Jeffrey Epstein himself, inviting him to a private Democratic fundraising dinner to get to know Congressman Jeffries. Now, remember, guys, by 2013, Epstein wasn't a mystery. He wasn't some controversial billionaire. No, he was a publicly known convicted sex offender whose crimes were already documented, exposed, and widely reported. So the question then becomes unavoidable. Why was a convicted predator being courted by Democrat power brokers? And why was Jeffries being promoted as someone worth meeting? And so this right here, guys, this is where the national embarrassment truly began. Because when CNN confronted Jeffries with the email live on air, you could practically see the oxygen leaving the room. I mean, the host laid it out clearly. Epstein was invited to meet Jeffries. His team sent the message. The timing matched. The receipts were undeniable. Jeffries' response, I have no recollection. Yeah. He denied everything. He denied meeting Epstein, denied receiving money, denied ever engaging in any conversation, but he couldn't explain the email. He couldn't explain the invite, and he wouldn't answer a single yes or no question directly. So what is the Democratic House leader so afraid of is the real question everyone's asking right now. Why can't he just give a straight answer about Epstein of all people, right? So next, we move to the part of the story that really should have ended political careers instantly, because when the House released more than 20,000 pages of documents, one exchange went viral for all the wrong reasons. Stacey Plaskett texting with Jeffrey Epstein during a live 2019 hearing targeting President Trump and Michael Cohen. In the messages, Epstein literally explains who Rana Graff is, Trump's longtime assistant. Minutes later, Plaskett repeats that exact information word for word during her questioning. And after she finishes, Epstein texts her, "Good work." A convicted predator spoon-feeding questions to a sitting congressional delegate during a hearing aimed at Donald Trump. You know that feeling when something's finally handled, that moment. You know what I'm saying? This is what happens after Chapter fixes your Medicare plan. This is why I partnered with Chapter, folks. They don't sell, they solve. And they make your Medicare coverage feel the way that it should have felt from the very start. Now, one of our viewers, she said, "I walked away smiling. It actually felt good to handle my insurance." So let me ask, when was the last time fixing something felt that good, right? Well, most people are already smiling right now after dialing the phone number right there at the bottom of your screen or visiting askchapter.org/Ron. That phone number again is 909-563-8279. And here's what one of our subscribers recently shared shared about their experience with Chapter. So Bob said, I called Chapter and they were able to save me over $6,000 a year. Plus, the plan pays me back $135 each month to offset my meds. I love it, guys. Now, what made the scandal even worse was Plaskett's reaction once the text went public. So rather than admit the obvious or take accountability, she shrugged off the entire incident by saying that prosecutors get information from whoever you can. Now, this is her defense. Whoever you can, as if Jeffrey Epstein, convicted sex trafficker of minors, was just another casual source to consult during a congressional hearing. Well, this wasn't some anonymous tip or some distant rumor. This was a direct communication with a man who exploited children and manipulated power structures for decades. So ask yourself, guys, is this really who Democrats rely on for insight into Donald Trump? Yeah. So now, here's where things really turn from suspicious to downright humiliating. So the CNN host in particular, pressed Hakeem Jeffries 3 separate times with one simple question. Were Stacey Plaskett's texts with Epstein appropriate? And 3 times, Jeffries refused to answer it. Not once did he say yes. Not once did he say no. Instead, he hid behind process talk, claiming the censure vote was a political stunt, insisting nothing illegal occurred, and dodging the morality of the situation itself. Now, think about that, okay? The Democratic leader in the House cannot bring himself to say it's inappropriate for a member of Congress to be texting a convicted sex or child predator. I mean, why? That is the real question. Now, here's where the hypocrisy becomes impossible to ignore. These are the same Democrats who spent years attacking Donald Trump for a single photograph that was taken in the early 1990s, long before Epstein's crimes were widely known. They insisted that the picture alone meant Trump was complicit, corrupt, or even worse. Yet, when Plaskett is caught actively texting Epstein in 2019, years after his conviction, Democrats suddenly claim that it was not a big deal. Okay, no big deal, right? Yeah, sure. Suddenly context matters. Suddenly chronology matters. Suddenly nothing illegal happened, right? This is the double standard America is sick of. When Trump is involved, they scream scandal. When it's their own members being exposed, they rewrite the rules overnight. You see what I'm saying here, right? But the unraveling didn't stop with Epstein. No, because right in the middle of Jeffries' damage control tour, another crisis hit the Democratic caucus, this time from within. So Representative Troy Garcia was caught orchestrating one of the most blatant election manipulation schemes in recent history. So he filed for re-election, allowed the deadline to pass, then suddenly announced his retirement, leaving only his chief of staff, who secretly filed beforehand as the sole Democrat on the ballot. Now, the backlash was immediate, and in a stunning rebuke, 23 House Democrats joined Republicans in condemning Garcia's move. Even Jeffries' own members are signaling it. They already know that the leadership has completely lost control. So naturally, the CNN host confronted Jeffries about the Garcia scheme, and for the first time in one interview, Jeffries completely fell apart. I mean, she asked plainly whether this maneuver betrayed democracy, whether manipulating filing deadlines to secure uncontested power undermined the very system that Democrats claim Donald Trump threatens. Jeffries, of course, dodged again. He wouldn't criticize Garcia. He wouldn't condemn the tactic. Instead, he launched into this rambling detour about tariffs, the Affordable Care Act, and unrelated policy talking points. But the host wasn't buying it, and neither was the audience. I was actually surprised that it went down this way on CNN. This wasn't leadership. This is a man drowning in scandals he can no longer spin. So at this point, you could pretty much feel the ground shifting beneath the Democratic Party. The cracks weren't subtle anymore. They were loud, public, and multiplying by the hour. Members who typically closed ranks around Jeffries, they began distancing themselves, openly disagreeing with his refusal to address the Plaskett texts, the Epstein email, and the Garcia scandal. The sense of panic was unmistakable. I mean, this wasn't a party defending its leader. This was a party bracing for impact. Jeffries went on CNN hoping to calm the waters, but instead he ignited a full-scale internal revolt. When your own caucus starts breaking formation, it's not politics anymore. This is survival mode. Now, here's the twist nobody in the Democratic leadership saw coming. Back in 2022 and 2023, Democrats loudly demanded that the full release of Epstein files be exposed, convinced that they could somehow weaponize them against Donald Trump. They never imagined a future where Trump would actually return back to the White House, and then those same files would continue surfacing under a Trump Justice Department. And so now, as new emails and communications appear, none implicating Trump, but repeatedly implicating Democrats, their old demands for transparency suddenly have become political suicide. They wanted every name, every document, every connection. Well, they're getting exactly what they asked for, and it's destroying them from the inside out. So by this point in the interview, even viewers who normally tune out political drama, they're glued to the screen, not because Jeffries was offering answers, but because his body language was screaming louder than his words. His eyes looked sunken, his voice tightened, and sweat visibly pooled near his temple as the questions just kept coming his way. Every deflection seemed to drain another ounce of confidence from him. I mean, this wasn't the polished, disciplined Jeffries Democrats try to present. This was a man that was cornered, overwhelmed, and visibly shaken by the weight of the scandals that were closing in on him. It just didn't feel like an interview anymore. It kind of felt more like a breaking point. And then came the moment that will haunt Jeffries for years. So the CNN host asked him the simplest and most devastating question of the night. Will you personally speak with Stacey Plaskett or Garcia about these concerns? You know, a normal leader would have said, of course. But Jeffries couldn't. He froze, blinked, and launched into yet another scripted attack about Republican stunts, refusing to even acknowledge that his members' behavior deserved a conversation. So with that one dodge, Jeffries confirmed what millions were already seeing. He cannot correct his party, he cannot confront misconduct, and he cannot lead through crisis. He is not steering the ship is steering him. So what happened next was the moment that everybody watching could feel the shift. So right up until this point, the CNN host had been firm but professional. But after watching Jeffries dodge every question about Epstein, avoid condemning Plaskett, ignore the Garcia scandal, and refuse to speak to his own members, she broke through the facade. Her face said everything: disbelief, frustration, and shock that the House Democratic leader could not answer one single question about ethics. And so then she asked the line that cut through the entire interview. Is this why people don't like politics? And in that one instant, even CNN, usually his safe ground, saw what everyone else already knew. Jeffries was out of answers and out of credibility. And this leads to the larger, unavoidable truth that Democrats hoped would never be spoken out loud. Throughout all the newly released documents, the one pattern that jumps off the page is this: Epstein keeps turning up in Democratic circles long after his conviction. I mean, he was texting Plaskett back in 2019. His name appeared in fundraising outreaches in 2013. He met with prominent Democrat donors and academics, but Trump banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago in the mid-2000s. There's no evidence of communication in the released files, no invitations, no secret emails. The narrative that they pushed for years that Trump was tied to Epstein has collapsed. The truth is cutting in the opposite direction. So now we reach the most ironic twist of all. This is the part that exposes the entire moral foundation that Democrats have been preaching for nearly a decade, for years. They insisted that they were the defenders of democracy, the guardians of ethics, the party standing between America and authoritarianism. Yet, here we are, guys. Plaskett texting Epstein during a congressional hearing, Garcia manipulating filing deadlines to secure a handpicked successor, and Jeffries caught in an email trail linking his team to a convicted predator. So how do you claim to protect democracy, meanwhile excusing predators, rigging elections, and dodging basic accountability? The truth is simple. Their slogan collapses the moment the spotlight turns inward. So now, with new Epstein emails dropping, internal rebellions erupting, and CNN of all networks dismantling his credibility live on air, every eye in Washington has turned to one man: Hakeem Jeffries. The panic inside the Democratic Party is real. I mean, more documents are coming, more names could surface, more connections could emerge, and with President Donald J. Trump in office, there is no political shield left to soften the blow. This isn't the end of a scandal. This is the beginning of a landslide. And deep down, the Democratic leadership knows it. This is exactly why they're scrambling. They're sweating and they're spinning, because once the truth starts spilling, ain't no stopping it.